The ranch sat far from the nearest town, surrounded by wide open land that seemed to stretch forever. Dusty roads led nowhere fast, and most people avoided the area unless they truly had a reason to be there. This was exactly why the rancher had chosen this place. For many years, he had lived alone, waking up each morning to the sound of wind moving through dry grass and animals waiting to be fed. Silence had become his closest companion, and routine had become his way of surviving each day. He woke before sunrise, as he always did. The sky was still dark, painted in deep shades of blue and gray. He sat up slowly on his bed, listening. There was nothing unusual, no voices, no footsteps, no sounds of vehicles, just the familiar quiet that wrapped around the ranch like a blanket. He got dressed in the same worn clothes he had owned for years. Clothes that carried the smell of dust, hay, and hard work. He did not care much about appearance anymore. Out here, no one was watching. The rancher moved through his small house with practiced steps. The place was clean but simple. There were no decorations, no family photos on the walls. A few old tools leaned in the corner, and a small table stood near the window. He brewed his coffee and drank it slowly, standing instead of sitting, watching the land outside. The sun slowly rose, lighting up the fields in soft golden colors. It was a beautiful sight, but he rarely allowed himself to think of it that way. Beauty often reminded him of things he had lost. After finishing his coffee, he stepped outside. The morning air was cool, and the smell of earth filled his lungs. He walked toward the barn, boots crunching against the gravel. The animals recognized his steps and began to stir. Feeding them was one of the few things that still gave him a sense of purpose. They depended on him, and in return, they asked for nothing more than care and consistency. As he worked, his mind stayed quiet. He did not think much about the past, at least not on purpose. Thinking too deeply only opened doors he had spent years trying to keep closed. Long ago, his life had been different. There had been laughter, voices, and warmth in this same land. But life had taken a turn he never expected, and the pain that followed pushed him away from people. Instead of fighting it, he chose distance. Instead of healing, he chose silence. People in nearby towns knew of him, but only by reputation. Some said he was unfriendly, others said he was strange. A few believed he had something to hide. The truth was simpler than any rumor. He had been hurt deeply, and rather than risk being hurt again, he built a life where no one could reach him. The ranch became his shield. By mid-morning, the sun was higher, and the rancher moved along the fence line, checking for damage. Fences were important. They marked boundaries, kept animals safe, and kept the outside world at a distance. He liked that. Boundaries made sense. They were clear and honest. People, on the other hand, were complicated. They crossed lines, broke trust, and left scars that never fully healed. As he walked, he remembered how different things had been years ago. He remembered working alongside others, sharing meals, and talking about small things that somehow felt important back then. Those memories surfaced quietly, like shadows, and he pushed them aside. He had learned that the past had a way of pulling him back into emotions he could not control. So, he focused on the present, on the fence, on the land, on the work that needed to be done. Lunch was simple, a piece of bread, some leftovers, and water. He ate alone, sitting on a wooden step outside the house. The silence around him was deep, but it did not feel empty. It felt familiar. Over time, loneliness had turned into something he understood well. He did not need conversation. He did not need company. Or at least, that was what he told himself. In the afternoon, the heat grew stronger. The rancher wiped sweat from his forehead and continued working, fixing a loose board, tightening wire, checking gates. Each task kept his hands busy and his thoughts under control. The land demanded effort, and he gave it without complaint. It was easier to care for land than people. Land never lied, never disappointed him, and never walked away. As the sun began to lower, the rancher returned to the house. He washed up, prepared a simple dinner, and ate in silence. The evening sky glowed in shades of orange and pink. He watched it through the window, feeling a quiet heaviness in his chest. Nights were harder than mornings. When work ended, there was nothing left to distract him from his thoughts. Sometimes, he wondered what his life might have been like if things had gone differently. If he had stayed connected. If he had forgiven more easily. If he had not chosen this lonely path. But those thoughts never stayed long. He had built his life this way for a reason. Loneliness felt safer than hope. Before going to bed, he stepped outside one last time. The land was calm, and the stars filled the sky. The rancher stood there, hands in his pockets, breathing slowly. He believed his life would always remain this way, quiet, predictable, and untouched by change. He had no idea that soon, something unexpected would step into his world and challenge everything he believed about being alone. For now, though, he returned inside, closed the door, and prepared for sleep, unaware that the silence he trusted so deeply was about to be broken. The next morning began like any other. The rancher woke before sunrise, followed the same routine, and stepped outside with his coffee cup in hand. The land looked peaceful, quiet, and unchanged. He believed the day would pass the same way all the others had. He had no reason to think otherwise. Nothing unusual ever happened out here. That was the comfort of living alone. As the sky slowly brightened, he finished his coffee and headed toward the barn. The animals greeted him with familiar sounds, and he moved through his work without thinking too much. His body knew the routine better than his mind did. Feeding, checking water, and making sure everything was in order kept him focused. The early hours passed smoothly. Later in the morning, he decided to walk along the far fence line. That section bordered open land that stretched toward the road, though the road itself was barely used. He liked checking that fence early. It gave him time to think and made him feel in control of his space. As he walked, the sun climbed higher, warming the ground beneath his boots. Then he heard it. At first, he thought it was the wind. The land often played tricks with sound, especially in the open fields. He stopped walking and listened carefully. The sound came again, soft but clear. It was not the wind. It was a cry. His body stiffened. He had not heard a human voice on his land in years. The sound was weak, shaky, and full of emotion. He felt his chest tighten as he followed the noise toward the fence. With every step, his mind filled with questions. Who was out here? Why were they crying? And how had they found his ranch? As he reached the fence, he saw her. A woman stood just outside the wooden posts, holding onto the fence as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Her clothes were dirty and wrinkled, her hair hung loosely around her face, and her shoulders shook as she cried quietly. She looked exhausted, like someone who had walked far without rest. When she noticed him, she froze, eyes wide with fear. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rancher stood several feet away, unsure of what to do. His first instinct was to protect himself. Years of isolation had taught him to be cautious. People brought trouble, questions, and pain, yet something about the woman's state made it impossible to simply turn away. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. Tears rolled down her face as she struggled to form words. The rancher felt uncomfortable. He was not used to emotions, especially not someone else's. He shifted his weight, his hands clenched at his sides. Finally, she managed to speak. Her voice was soft and shaking. She said she was sorry for showing up like this. She said she did not know where else to go. She had been walking for hours, maybe longer. When she saw the fence and the house in the distance, she felt a small sense of hope. The rancher listened in silence. He did not invite her in. He did not tell her to leave either. He simply stood there, watching her closely. His eyes scanned her face, her hands, her posture. She did not seem dangerous. She seemed broken. He asked her why she was here. His voice sounded rough, even to his own ears. He had not spoken much in years, and the words felt strange. She explained that she had run from a bad situation. She did not give details, only that she was scared and tired. She had no phone, no money, and no clear plan. The rancher looked down at the ground, then back at her. Part of him wanted to tell her to go back the way she came. This land was his safe place, his quiet world. Letting someone in meant opening doors he had kept locked for a long time. But another part of him, the part he tried to ignore, remembered what it felt like to be alone and desperate. He noticed her hands shaking. Her lips were dry, and her face was pale. Whatever she had been through, it had taken a toll on her. Without saying much, he walked toward the house and returned with a bottle of water. He held it out to her through the fence. She hesitated before taking it, as if unsure whether to trust him. Then she accepted it with both hands and drank slowly, like someone afraid the water might disappear. She thanked him again and again, her voice filled with relief. The rancher stepped back, giving her space. He told her she could sit on a nearby rock if she needed to rest. She nodded, and did so carefully, wiping her face with the back of her sleeve. As she sat there, breathing deeply, the rancher felt something shift inside him. The fence that had always felt like protection now felt thinner, less certain. Time passed quietly. The woman stopped crying, though her eyes remained heavy with emotion. She explained that she did not want to cause trouble. She only needed a moment to gather herself. The rancher nodded, unsure of what to say. He was not good with comfort or advice. Silence was his usual response, yet the silence between them felt different. It was not empty or cold. It was careful, waiting. The rancher found himself asking simple questions: where she was headed, whether she had family, if she needed help. Each question surprised him as much as it surprised her. He did not usually ask about people's lives. Her answers were short and guarded, but honest. She had lost her sense of direction, both physically and emotionally. She had trusted the wrong people and paid the price. Now, she was just trying to survive one step at a time. The rancher listened. He did not judge her. He did not interrupt. In her story, he heard echoes of his own past. Different details, but the same feeling of loss and regret. He realized how long it had been since he had truly listened to another person. As the sun climbed higher, he knew he could not leave her out there. Not like this. He told her she could rest for a while, get some food, and regain her strength. He made it clear it was temporary, just help, nothing more. She looked at him with surprise and gratitude, tears filling her eyes again. For the first time in years, the rancher unlocked the gate. As the woman stepped inside the fence, neither of them knew how deeply that small act would change their lives. The quiet world he had built so carefully had been touched by something real and human. And though he did not realize it yet, the moment she appeared at his fence marked the beginning of a story neither of them could walk away from. The woman followed the rancher slowly toward the house. Her steps were careful, as if she still feared that she might be told to leave at any moment. The rancher walked a few steps ahead, not speaking much, unsure of how to guide someone through a space that had been only his for so long. The sound of 2 sets of footsteps on the dirt felt strange to him. It was a reminder that he was no longer alone. When they reached the house, he opened the door and stepped aside, allowing her to enter first. She paused at the doorway, taking in the small room as if it were something fragile. The house was simple, with plain furniture and clean floors, but to her, it felt safe. She stepped inside quietly, almost respectfully, as though she did not want to disturb the peace that lived there. The rancher pointed to a chair near the table and told her she could sit. He went to the kitchen area and began preparing something warm to eat. His movements were slow and careful, not rushed. Cooking for someone else felt unfamiliar. He usually ate alone and without much thought, but now he found himself paying attention, wanting to make sure the food was enough and properly prepared. The woman sat with her hands folded in her lap. As the warmth of the house surrounded her, her body began to relax. The fear that had kept her moving for so long slowly loosened its grip. She let out a deep breath she did not realize she had been holding. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt like she could rest. When the rancher placed a plate in front of her, she looked up at him with gratitude in her eyes. She thanked him softly. He nodded, uncomfortable with praise, and sat across from her with his own plate. For a few moments, they ate in silence. The quiet was not awkward, but thoughtful, as if both were unsure how much to say. After a while, the woman began to speak. She did not rush. Her words came slowly, carefully chosen. She talked about where she had come from, not naming places, but describing feelings. She spoke of trust that had been broken, of plans that had fallen apart, and of fear that followed her day and night. She explained how she had kept walking, not because she knew where she was going, but because stopping felt worse. The rancher listened closely. He did not interrupt. He did not push for details she was not ready to give. He simply listened, the way he wished someone had listened to him years ago. As she spoke, he noticed how her voice grew steadier, how the weight she carried seemed to lighten just a little with each sentence. She told him about the moment she saw the ranch fence. From a distance, it had looked like nothing special, just land and wood and a small house. But to her, it felt like a sign. She said she did not know why she walked toward it, only that something inside her told her to try. When she reached the fence and heard her own voice crying, she felt ashamed. She had not meant to break down in front of a stranger. The rancher looked down at his hands as she spoke. He felt a quiet ache in his chest. He remembered moments from his own past when he had felt lost, when he had wished for someone to simply offer a safe place. He had not received it then. Maybe that was why he had opened the gate now. When she finished speaking, there was a pause. The rancher cleared his throat and spoke gently. He told her she could stay for a short while, just until she felt strong enough to decide her next step. He made it clear that there were rules, not harsh ones, but simple boundaries. He needed his space, and he valued honesty. She agreed quickly, relieved by the chance to rest without pressure. Over the next few hours, the house slowly filled with quiet activity. The woman washed her face and hands, the simple act bringing her comfort. The rancher showed her a small room where she could lie down if she needed to sleep. She thanked him again, her voice full of emotion. Before closing the door, she said she would not forget his kindness. While she rested, the rancher stepped outside. He walked along the yard, thinking deeply. The presence of another person stirred emotions he had long buried. He felt nervous, unsure, but also strangely calm. Helping her did not feel like a mistake. It felt necessary. As the sun began to lower, the woman joined him outside. She looked different now, still tired, but cleaner, steadier. They sat a few feet apart, watching the sky change colors. The rancher asked her simple questions about what she liked, what helped her feel calm. She answered with small smiles, grateful for conversation that did not demand too much. She asked him about the ranch. He told her how long he had lived there, how the land kept him busy, how silence had become part of his life. He did not share everything, but he shared enough. He spoke of loss, not in detail, but in feeling. She listened with the same care he had given her. As night fell, they shared another meal. This time, the silence felt lighter. There was an understanding between them, unspoken but real, two people who had been hurt in different ways, finding a moment of peace in the same place. Before heading to bed, the rancher stood at the door and looked out at the land. He realized that the quiet he had protected for so long had changed. It was no longer empty. It held the sound of another life breathing nearby. Surprisingly, the thought did not scare him. That night, as both lay awake in separate rooms, they thought about the day. The woman felt safe for the first time in a long while. The rancher felt something he had not felt in years, a small sense of connection. Neither knew what tomorrow would bring, but both understood that the fence that once divided the world had become a bridge, and that their lives were already moving in a new direction. Morning arrived softly over the ranch. The light moved slowly across the fields, touching the fence, the barn, and finally the small house. Inside, the rancher woke earlier than usual. For a moment, he lay still, listening. There was a new sound in the house, quiet but noticeable, the gentle movement of another person. It reminded him that yesterday had not been a dream. He got up, washed his face, and stepped outside. The air was cool, and the land looked calm, just as it always had. Yet something felt different. The ranch was the same, but he was not. He took a deep breath and began his morning work, trying to focus on familiar tasks. A little later, the woman came outside. She moved slowly, still careful, as if she did not want to disturb anything. She greeted him with a soft good morning. He nodded in return. For a few seconds, they stood in silence, watching the animals. The quiet between them was gentle, not uncomfortable. He offered her some breakfast, and they ate together at the small table outside. The food was simple, but it felt warmer when shared. The woman thanked him again, but this time, he waved it off. He told her she did not need to keep thanking him. She smiled slightly, understanding. After breakfast, the rancher explained that he needed to work and asked if she felt well enough to help with small tasks. He made it clear that there was no pressure. She agreed quickly, happy to feel useful. He showed her how to carry light tools, how to move carefully around the animals, and where she could help without strain. As they worked side by side, time passed quietly. The woman followed his lead, watching closely and learning fast. She did not complain, even when the sun grew warm. Working gave her something to focus on besides her thoughts. For the rancher, having someone nearby felt strange at first, but slowly, it became easier. At one point, she laughed softly when she struggled with a simple task. The sound surprised him. It had been a long time since laughter had touched his land. The sound stayed with him, echoing in his mind even after it faded. He realized how empty the ranch had been without even noticing it. As the day went on, they began to talk more. Nothing heavy at first. Simple things. She talked about the little habits she had picked up while traveling, how she learned to rest when she could and stay alert when she needed to. He spoke about the seasons on the ranch, how the land changed and how each change brought different work. Later, they took a break in the shade. The woman looked out at the wide fields and said the land felt honest. She said it did not pretend to be something it was not. The rancher nodded. That was one of the reasons he had stayed. The land never asked questions or made demands beyond effort and care. As the afternoon passed, memories began to surface for the rancher. Watching her move around the ranch reminded him of people from his past. Not specific faces, but feelings. Companionship, shared effort. Moments when life had felt fuller. He did not push these thoughts away this time. He let them sit quietly inside him. The woman noticed his distant look and did not press him. She had learned that some moments needed silence. Instead, she continued helping, respecting his space. That understanding made him trust her more. She was not trying to force her way into his life. She was simply existing alongside him. As the sun lowered, the work slowed. They washed up and prepared dinner together. This time, he let her help more. She chopped vegetables while he cooked. Their movements were careful, almost thoughtful, as if both were learning a new rhythm. Sharing the space felt less strange now. During dinner, the woman spoke more openly. She shared a little more about her past, still avoiding details, but opening up about how lonely she had felt even when surrounded by people. She talked about how fear had shaped many of her choices. Her voice was calm, but her words carried weight. The rancher listened and felt something break open inside him. He realized he understood that kind of loneliness. He told her, quietly, that he had once believed being alone would protect him. He said he had thought distance was safer than connection. She looked at him with understanding, not pity. She told him that sometimes protection turns into another kind of pain, not because it is wrong, but because it keeps life out along with harm. Her words stayed with him. He had never thought of it that way. That evening, They sat outside again, watching the sky darken. The stars slowly appeared, one by one. The woman wrapped her arms around herself, and the rancher offered her a blanket. She accepted it with a grateful nod. They sat there quietly, two people sharing the same sky, the same moment. The rancher felt a mix of emotions. Part of him was afraid. Letting someone stay meant change. It meant risk. But another part of him felt lighter. Like a weight he had carried for years was slowly being set down. He realized that helping her had also helped him in ways he did not expect. Before going inside, the woman thanked him again. But this time, her words were softer, deeper. She said his kindness had reminded her that not all doors were closed, that not all people turned away. He did not know how to respond, so he simply told her she was safe for the night. As they went to their rooms, the rancher paused in the hallway. He looked at the closed door where she slept, and then at his own. He realized that his life, once so predictable, was changing. The walls he had built were beginning to crack, not from force, but from quiet moments of trust. That night, sleep came slowly, but peacefully. The rancher did not feel the usual heaviness. Instead, he felt thoughtful. The woman, in her room, felt something she had not felt in a long time: hope. Both understood that whatever happened next, this day had already changed them. Outside, the land rested under the stars, holding their shared silence. The ranch was no longer just a place of isolation. It had become a place where two wounded lives were slowly finding balance, one quiet day at a time. The next morning felt calm, yet full of quiet meaning. The rancher woke with a strange mix of peace and uncertainty in his chest. For years, mornings had been empty and predictable. Now, they carried a sense of possibility he was not used to feeling. He dressed slowly and stepped outside, letting the cool air clear his thoughts. The woman was already awake. She stood near the fence, watching the land as the sun rose. The soft light touched her face, and for the first time since she arrived, she looked steady, not fully healed, but stronger. When she noticed him, she smiled gently. It was a simple smile, but it carried gratitude, comfort, and something close to trust. They shared breakfast quietly. There was no rush, no pressure. Just two people existing in the same space, aware that something important was coming. The woman knew she could not stay forever. The rancher knew this too, even though he had not said it out loud. After eating, she spoke first. She said she felt better now, clearer in her thoughts and stronger in her body. She said the rest, the safety, and the kindness had helped her more than she could explain. She did not want to take advantage of his generosity. She needed to decide her next step. The rancher listened carefully. His heart felt heavy, but he did not show it. He told her he understood. Life had its own paths, and people could not always stay where they found comfort. He said she was free to choose what was best for her. The words were honest, even if they were difficult. She explained that she planned to head toward the nearby town. Not immediately, but soon. She needed to reconnect with someone she trusted and rebuild her life slowly. She admitted she was still afraid, but not as much as before. The fear no longer controlled her the way it had. The rancher nodded. He offered to drive her part of the way when she was ready. The offer surprised her. He rarely left his land, and she could tell this was not a small thing for him. She accepted with appreciation, understanding the weight behind his words. They spent the rest of the morning together, finishing small tasks around the ranch. Every moment felt meaningful now. Like time was asking them to pay attention. They worked in quiet understanding, each aware that this chapter was coming to an end. As midday approached, the woman packed the few things she had. There was not much, just clean clothes, a bottle of water, and a sense of direction she had not had before. The rancher watched from the doorway, feeling emotions he had long forgotten how to handle. When it was time to leave, they stood near the fence where they had first met. The wooden posts looked the same, but to both of them, they meant something different now. The fence was no longer just a boundary. It was a turning point. She thanked him again, but this time her voice was steady. She told him that his kindness had saved her, in a way she would never forget. She said that because of him, she believed she could move forward without fear controlling her every step. The rancher felt his throat tighten. He told her that her arrival had changed him too. He admitted that he had built his life around being alone, believing it was the only way to survive. But her presence had reminded him that connection did not always bring pain. Sometimes, it brought healing. They shared a quiet moment, standing there with the wind moving through the grass. There was no dramatic goodbye, no promises they could not keep, just honesty and respect. The woman stepped toward the truck, and the rancher opened the door for her. The drive was quiet but comfortable. The land slowly changed as they moved closer to town. The woman watched the road ahead, feeling nervous but hopeful. The rancher kept his eyes on the road, feeling the weight of the moment settle in his chest. When they reached the point where she would continue on her own, they stopped. She stepped out of the truck and turned to him one last time. She told him she hoped he would not close himself off again. She said the world still needed people like him, people who helped without asking for anything in return. He did not know how to respond to that. So he simply wished her well and told her to take care of herself. She nodded, smiled softly, and walked away. The rancher watched until she disappeared from sight. The drive back felt longer than usual. The rancher returned to his land, parked the truck, and stood still for a long moment. The ranch was quiet again, but it felt different now. The silence was no longer heavy. It felt open, like space waiting to be filled. In the days that followed, the rancher returned to his routine. He fed the animals, fixed fences, and worked the land as he always had. But something inside him had shifted. He found himself noticing things he once ignored: the warmth of the sun, the sound of birds, the simple comfort of daily effort. Sometimes, he thought of the woman and wondered how she was doing. He hoped she had found safety and strength. He hoped she remembered that the fence she once cried against had led her to a moment of peace. Weeks passed, and then months. One afternoon, as the rancher repaired the same fence line where they had first met, he paused. He realized he no longer saw the fence as a wall. It was a reminder that even after years of isolation, life could still surprise him. He began visiting town occasionally. Just small trips, simple conversations, nothing overwhelming. He was not rushing into change, but he was no longer running from it either. One evening, as the sun set over the land, the rancher stood quietly and smiled to himself. He understood now that being alone was not the same as being safe. And opening his gate that day had not been a mistake, it had been a beginning. The ranch remained his home, steady and quiet. But now, it also carried a story of connection, kindness, and quiet courage. A story that reminded him, and would always remind him, that even the most guarded lives can change when one unexpected moment arrives at the fence.